Hello everyone, today's lesson is part of the bioenergetics topic of B1, which is part of the biology scheme of learning for year 10 and 11. So the learning objective for today is to know what aerobic respiration is and why living organisms need to respire, and to know what anaerobic respiration is and how it is different to aerobic respiration. So as always, at the start of a lesson, we are going to start with retrieval practice. So please can you pause this screencast now and complete the answers to the 10 questions. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at the 10 questions now. Please pick up your green pen and mark your answers. Make sure you correct any that you have written incorrectly. So number 1, the part of a plant cell that contains DNA is the nucleus. Number 2, the cell membrane is the part of the cell which enters and exits. So number 2, the answer is the cell membrane. Number 3, the 4 different parts of the blood are the red blood cells, white blood cells, plasma, and platelets. Number 4, the part of the blood which carries oxygen is the red blood cells, and if we're being really specific, it's the hemoglobin, which is a protein found in red blood cells. Number 5, the part of the blood which carries carbon dioxide is the plasma. Number 6, arteries have thick walls because they have to withstand high pressure blood. Number 7, a valve is a part of a vein, or they are found in the heart and they stop the backflow of blood. Number 8, the 4 types of pathogen are protist, bacteria, virus and fungus. Number 9, diabetes is classed as a non-communicable disease because it is not spread from organism to organism by pathogens, so it can't be passed on. Number 10, what should be given to a patient with a bacterial infection? That would be an antibiotic. If you missed any of those, just go back a little bit in the screencast, but they are the 10 answers. Okay, moving on. So, what is respiration? Respiration is a chemical reaction that happens in living cells, including plants and animal cells. It is the way that energy is released from glucose so that all other chemical processes needed for life can happen. Now, there are 2 types of respiration that we're going to talk about today: aerobic, which means with oxygen, and anaerobic, without oxygen. Now, I'd just like to mention here a misconception that always comes up when talking about respiration. Respiration is a chemical process that happens in this structure here in your cells. This is a mitochondria. Now, a lot of people think that respiration is breathing. Respiration is not breathing. Okay, respiration is a chemical process that happens in your cells. Okay, so please pause this screencast and get that definition written in your books. Okay, hopefully you got the definition for respiration written down. I'd like to show this to you now. So this is an equation for aerobic respiration. I have just told you that respiration is a chemical reaction. Now this, I believe, proves that it's a chemical reaction, because when you do chemistry, you will do chemical equations. This is another example of a chemical equation. So aerobic respiration, glucose from the food that you eat, oxygen from your lungs that passes into your blood, they chemically react with each other to make carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Okay, the energy is in brackets because that's not actually made of atoms. Okay, so the main part of the equation is glucose plus oxygen makes carbon dioxide plus water. There are not many equations that you need to know in biology, but this is one of them. Now, if you are sitting the higher paper, you will also need to know the balanced symbol equation, which is at the bottom here. Please, can you also write that into your books? So this chemical formula here represents glucose. This represents oxygen. Then we've got water and carbon dioxide. And you have to balance it. So we've got these 6s at the beginning of the oxygen, the water, and the carbon dioxide. Okay, so please make sure you learn these equations. But what these equations also prove is that respiration is a chemical reaction. It is not breathing. Okay, so it's something that is happening in your cells right this minute. Okay, so a little summary here. Aerobic respiration provides the energy for all life processes. It uses glucose and oxygen because they're the two reactants that were at the left-hand side of our equation. Now, I've already mentioned this, but here is it in writing. Where does respiration happen? It happens in the mitochondria. So I showed you an image a couple of slides ago of the mitochondria that are found in your cells. Now, there are certain cells that have got more mitochondria than others. Liver, sperm, muscle being 3 examples. Now, if you think about what happens in the mitochondria, providing the energy for all life processes, it might give you a little bit of a clue to why liver, sperm and muscle have got many of them. And the answer is at the right-hand side of the slide here. They have lots of this structure, this mitochondria, because they need energy to do their job. So muscles need energy to be able to contract when you are moving. Your liver is working really hard to get rid of toxins and other such products in your body. And sperm, that is part of the male reproductive system, sperm have to travel a very long way to get to the egg. Now, to do that, they have to swim, and swimming takes a lot of energy. Therefore, they have a lot of mitochondria because that is where energy is being released. Now, make sure you've got that mitochondria is where aerobic respiration takes place, and you've got a couple of examples of structures that have got a lot of mitochondria, because that often comes up in exams. Okay, so I just wanted to show you an example of a human cell, because I think it's really important that you see just how complex these cells are. We often just draw them as a circle with a black blob and a couple of other structures, when actually they are really, really complex. Now, most of the structures on here you won't need to know unless you go on to study A-level biology, but I do think it is really important for you to see just how complex they are and therefore how much is going on in our body cells. Okay, moving on then. So a little bit of a link to another topic here, the importance of enzymes. Now, enzymes are biological catalysts. They speed up chemical reactions. They make sure chemical reactions happen at a good enough rate, and they enable our bodies to function properly. Now, enzymes, therefore, are involved in respiration. Now, they enable respiration to happen at the correct rate so that we have got enough energy to function properly. Now, there are 2 factors that affect the rate of respiration: temperature and pH. Now, that is because they affect the enzyme activity. If the temperature is too high or too low, your enzymes won't work properly. If the pH is wrong in your body, enzymes won't work properly. So it's really important that our internal system of our body is able to keep the temperature and pH at the right level so that enzymes work efficiently, and therefore respiration can happen at the most effective and efficient rate possible. So just remember that in these exams they will link different topics together, enzymes and respiration being one of them. Okay. Right, let's have a look then. Why respire then? What do we need this energy for? So there are 3 main reasons that we need energy. Please, after I have discussed each one, can you pause the screencast and write them down? So the first one is for movement. Animals use ATP. It says ATP there, which is a molecule of energy. So you could just put energy to contract muscle cells, enabling organisms to move. So the first one is for movement. The next one is for warmth. We've just talked about the importance of our temperature staying at the right level. Now, we need to stay warm. When our surroundings are cold, respiration will increase to transfer more energy by heating to keep the body temperature constant. So our body is working, it's using energy to make sure that we stay warm. And the last one is growth. So to synthesize larger molecules from smaller molecules. And that word synthesize means put together. Okay, so the building up of larger molecules from smaller molecules. Okay, so make sure you've got those 3 things written into your books. There's a little extension question here. Is respiration an endothermic or exothermic reaction? How do you know this? So you may want to pause the screencast now, have a conversation if you're in class, or have a little think if you're at home, and think about whether respiration is endothermic or exothermic, which again linked to chemistry this time. Okay, so respiration is exothermic. Now, this picture here is a really good example of showing that it's exothermic. It means that heat is released to the surroundings. Now, just think about the last time you played football, or you went for a run, or you did any sort of exercise. You will have been respiring at a higher rate, and you will have got warm. That is showing that heat is being released to the environment. So respiration is an exothermic reaction. Okay, before you move on, make sure you've written those things down and then move on. Thank you. Okay, so a quick true or false. Please pause this screencast now and answer these questions. You don't need to write them out, but if one is false, please write down what the true statement would be. Okay, number 1, respiration is breathing. That is, of course, false. Respiration is a chemical process that happens in the mitochondria. Number 2, aerobic respiration happens in the mitochondria. That is true. Number 3, the main use of respiration is to release carbon dioxide. That is false. The main use, or the main reason for respiration, is to release energy. Number 4, energy is useful to stay warm, grow and move. That is true. And the word equation for respiration is oxygen plus glucose makes carbon dioxide plus water plus energy. That is also true. Make sure you have used your green pen to assess your true or false questions. Okay, moving on now then to our second learning objective, which is to know what anaerobic respiration is and how it is different to aerobic respiration. So if you look at these two images, if you're in class, you could pause the screencast and have a discussion. If not, just pause and have a little think. Okay, so the difference here is that the exercise that is taking place on this diagram, on this picture here, is done at quite a low intensity, and they're able to get lots of oxygen into their lungs and therefore into their respiring cells. Whereas this image here of Usain Bolt, it's such an explosive, high-intensity exercise that he isn't able to get oxygen to his cells quick enough. So he has to respire differently. Okay, so we'll do a different type of respiration, which we are going to look at now. Okay, so at the start of strenuous exercise, so high intensity exercise, your heart rate doesn't go up fast enough to supply the extra oxygen needed to meet the energy that you require to run really quickly or to perform certain exercises. So to make up for this, anaerobic respiration happens alongside aerobic respiration. And during anaerobic respiration, glucose is partly broken down. So because glucose is partly broken down, the glucose there, it isn't broken down this time into carbon dioxide and water, it's broken down to lactic acid and some energy. Okay, so this is a type of respiration that happens without oxygen. So the glucose is there on its own, it is partly broken down into lactic acid and some energy. Now, not as much energy is made during anaerobic respiration as is made in aerobic, but you get the energy really quickly. Because if you think about Usain Bolt and his 100 meters, he needs that energy really, really quickly. So this means that he can do anaerobic respiration at the same time as aerobic respiration and get this energy explosively, so he can get it really quickly. Now, this can't go on for very long though. He couldn't run that fast for a marathon because lactic acid is actually toxic. And when you get lactic acid building up in your muscles, it causes pain and it causes fatigue. And therefore, your body can respire anaerobically for a long time. Okay, please make sure you've paused this screencast and written down what anaerobic respiration is, and make sure you've written down the equation as well, because this is another equation that you do need to know. Okay, so what happens after strenuous exercise? What I would like you to do now, please, is pause this screencast, read the information at the top of this slide, so what happens after strenuous exercise, and I would like you to answer these 6 questions. You can either write the question out and then write the answer, or you can write the answer in full sentences. It is entirely up to you. Okay, so pause the screencast now, and can you fully answer these 6 questions? Okay, hopefully you've answered the 6 questions. Pick your green pen up now, please, and mark the answers. So the poisonous substance made during hard exercise is lactic acid. Number 2, the gas that cannot reach your muscle cells fast enough for aerobic respiration to take place is oxygen. Number 3, carbon dioxide and water are not made during anaerobic respiration because glucose is incompletely broken down. Number 4, athletes breathe more heavily after hard exercise to provide oxygen to allow the lactic acid to be broken down. Number 5, the term oxygen debt is the extra oxygen needed to break down the lactic acid. And number 6, your heart rate stays high for a while after exercise so that the lactic acid can be carried away by the blood to the liver where it can be broken down. Okay, so another little activity for you to complete now. Please can you read this information and try and spot the mistakes. So you don't need to copy this down. You might just write down the word where there is a mistake and write down what you would have written instead. I will help you with the first one. So when exercising very hard, the heart cannot get enough carbon dioxide to the kidney. So the first mistake I can see in that sentence is it shouldn't say carbon dioxide, it should say oxygen. Okay, that's the first one. There are another 8 mistakes. So pause the screencast and see if you can spot the mistakes. Okay, let's see how you've got on then. So number 1 I did for you, so it should have been oxygen instead of carbon dioxide. The second one, it shouldn't say to the kidney, it should just say to the cells or to the muscle cells would be even better. Number 3, anaerobic respiration does not need oxygen, so the answer is does not. Next one, it releases energy from glucose, but the amount is much, and that should say lower. It happens when there is not enough oxygen available for aerobic respiration. So that one's a spelling mistake. Here is the word equation. So that would be glucose makes lactic acid plus energy. Number 7, much more energy is released by aerobic respiration than by anaerobic respiration. The lactic acid formed during anaerobic respiration causes muscle fatigue. And that again is a spelling mistake. Okay, now remember fatigue means tiredness, so extreme tiredness, and your muscles can't carry on if they're too fatigued. Okay, so anaerobic respiration also happens in other organisms such as plant cells and yeast cells, but instead of lactic acid being made, ethanol and carbon dioxide are the products. So glucose makes ethanol plus carbon dioxide. Again, this is an equation that you do need to know, so please make sure you are writing this information from this slide. Now, this is called fermentation, and it's really important in the manufacture of bread and alcohol. So often in exams, they do ask you about fermentation, and they ask you which products are made because of this process. So make sure that you know that bread and alcohol can be made due to fermentation, and this is the equation. Okay, so the last activity for this aerobic versus anaerobic respiration lesson, please can you write down this table, draw this table into your books. So we're going to do a comparison of aerobic and anaerobic respiration, so you really clearly know where each one happens, the word equation, symbol equation, which one has more energy, which has less energy. Okay, now I am conscious that I haven't told you where anaerobic respiration happens, and it tends to happen in the cytoplasm. Okay, so I've given you the first answer there. So when you've drawn your table, make sure you write cytoplasm there. Draw the table, fill in the gaps as well as you can do, and then there are 4 extension questions for you to have a go at as well. Please pause the screencast now and complete the table and the 4 questions. Okay, fantastic. Hopefully you've all had a really good go at that. So there are the answers. The table is filled in for you. Please check your table, mark the answers that you've got correct. Make sure you fill in any gaps or correct any incorrect answers. And then the extension question answers are at the bottom as well for you to mark. Okay. Thank you for working really hard through the screencast today. Anything that you are unsure of, please go back in the screencast or email your teacher. Okay, have a great day.